Hey y'all, Moses here. I wanted to bring you guys a update on some of the things that have changed over the last few weeks regarding PUBG and some of the fallout from some of the previous media put out on things like the tick rate and network performance and some of the issues that have been affecting the game getting attention from the dev team. So the first thing I want to talk about is the changes to the lobby system and how it's affected the game. For me, having the lobby spread out didn't really seem like that drastic of a change. I didn't really think it was going to make that big of a deal. But now that it's in the game, it has noticeably improved the performance of the game in the early stages and throughout the game. So someone on Reddit decided to try and test these changes and have done another graph similar to what you saw in Battle Nonsense's video on tick rate. So the results are fairly positive. Apparently, after about 8 minutes of in-game time, the tick rate is settling around 30 hertz. Now, for those veterans of Counter-Strike Global Offensive or other competitive shooters, 30 tick rate is not amazing by any stretch, but compared to the results we saw in Battle Nonsense's video, these are much, much improved. That doesn't mean that the entire game is a smooth experience. However, as in the early game, tick rate is still all over the place. I'll leave a link on top of the image I've already shown down in the description below, so check that out if you'd like to see. So I think that 30 hertz stable, or at least relatively stable, no dramatic drops like we saw again in the Battle Nonsense charts, no dramatic drops down to like 2 tick rate randomly. I've found personally that performance in the game has become much smoother, but the remaining factor, or at least the remaining issue for server performance right now is ping. Ping variance between players is a major issue for input lag and when determining if a shot has registered or not. I've continued to experience hit registration issues, and I'm imagining that is now being amplified by ping, where tick rate was maybe to blame in previous instances. So the ping lock situation is now the remaining barrier to what some might call a fair playing field for players in certain regions. Now, ping locking players has its downsides. I mentioned in my previous video on this topic that places like South Africa would be left without a server or trying to connect to somewhere that is relatively far away. The one thing that I would like to bring up is that apparently the major barrier, or at least something that's been discussed in the past, is that China does not deserve to be locked out of the rest of the world when it comes to choosing a region. Now, I had some thoughts about this and I wanted to kind of bounce it off of you. I wonder if it would be possible to just remove the option to choose your region and instead implement an auto matchmaking service that would look at the people in your group and automatically match them with a region, so their players could not, intentionally change out of the region to make things more difficult. Now, in custom games, this would be a different story where everyone's playing on the same lobby, so it wouldn't affect things like competitive play, but it might alleviate some issue. Now, I haven't really, done all the math on whether or not that would be a great idea, but taking away the ability to change regions and instead implementing an automatic matchmaking system, again, based on the average ping among players, might alleviate the issue without necessarily region locking China or any other specific region. So at this point, it's a step in the right direction, and controlling ping is something that the devs need to look at now as the next step, as the tick rate issue is not completely resolved. The early game is still very erratic, and that is sometimes the hardest thing to deal with an erratic early game when things are most critical, like getting that gun off the floor or dealing with an enemy that's close by. I suppose that one factor in this that might not have been mentioned is the fact that after about 6 minutes into the game, most players are dead. The mid game is becoming less and less populated. In my games, I'm seeing sometimes 35 or maybe even less players alive after about 6 or 7 minutes into the game. So that will be helping with tick rate, but is maybe symptomatic of something that's an entirely different problem. That's not something I'm going to jump into this video. That's something I'd like to talk about somewhere else. But ultimately, I think that the server's performing well through the mid and late game is very welcome, and I'm happy to see those changes come into the game, or at least be the result of the changes being made. So speaking of changes, the dev team has released a list of known issues. This is not something that we've seen in the past where devs have acknowledged all of the different bugs being reported. So I've left a link to this specific forum post again in the link below. But I wanted to go over some of the known issues that I've seen on this list, and some things that I think would be excellent changes to the game. So these are issues that have already been resolved internally and that will be fixed in the next live server patch. The compass UI wobbling when parachuting straight down, dying from falling when vaulting or climbing in the water, the delay between the reload and the first shot. So this is the first shot delay that has been discovered again by a Reddit user, kind of measuring the input lag between the first click after a reload and a second shot. So that's, you know, a pretty big issue, especially in the early game where you're trying to do your best to make sure that you survive, where that delay between the reload and the first shot could mean life or death for you. This is prevalent on the pump action shotgun and is not present in ADS, but still a problem nonetheless. The adjusted zoom level in the 8x scope resets after changing into another weapon. So the 8x scope zoom that you choose on your sniper rifle will be maintained even after you switch weapons. That will be a nice quality of life change, because that's something that I frequently do. You know, zoom out the 8x and use it as vision if you don't have a 4x. So the 8x will become much more useful and less annoying to use when you're switching between your weapons. When a character opens the door while it says sitting down, but I imagine crouching, the door opens as the character stands up instead of opening immediately. So I don't know what that means. That might be a little bit of a language mix up there, but some issue with doors. And when the player changes seat while in the motorcycle is in the air, it stops and sinks into the ground. So that's just a straight up bug. The holographic and red dot sights are intermittently pixelated, so poor vision in the sights. I have not noticed that, but nice to see that being fixed as well. In-game text being missing or aligned is being fixed, and after reconnecting to the game, the camera direction of ADS FPP goes off intermittently. Now, those are the things that have already been fixed. Now, it's something to be mentioned is that some of the major issues that we've been seeing that have come about since the last patch are currently under investigation, or a fix is in progress. The random overturning of motorcycles, that's a major issue. The 3-seater and 2-seater bike will sometimes just randomly flip, which is, you know, on the 3-seater, not a welcome thing when it's already a danger of flipping almost all the time. When reporting through the replay, sometimes the name is wrong or even invisible. The 4X aim point shows in red instead of blue in colorblind mode. Friends list not functioning. Reconnect button does not show when trying to rejoin the game after being disconnected from a custom match. That was major. That was an issue all the way through qualifiers for IEM, which I'll get to in a second. And then the UI issues of reconnecting to a duo and squad game where you can't revive your teammates. You can't see your map markers. You can't see the HP indicators. All that stuff is a current bug. I've experienced that a ton in my games, and that's something that needs to be fixed right away. So glad to see it's been at least acknowledged. So I just want to touch briefly on IEM Katowice. It's coming up in the next month or so. If you follow the pro scene at all, don't roll your eyes and go esports ready. These are pro teams with big names, Optic, FaZe, and a few other esports organizations you might recognize from other games like Counter-Strike, etc. They have all been invited and qualified for this upcoming event, but during the qualifiers, that open teams were trying to vie for a position to go to the event as well. These issues were plaguing those teams. So this was an unfortunate fallout bug from the last patch, and this is an issue that has been ongoing in the competitive scene for the last week or so. So not only is it annoying for the pub players, it's also annoying everybody. So these fixes need to get implemented as soon as they are fixed. I am expecting a new test client this week as well. Poopy Queen mentioned on Twitter that this was something that was going to be coming this week. So we may see a new test client with all of these aforementioned fixes in them very, very soon. So that is something I'm looking forward to. So with all of that said, I'm interested to know how you guys are finding the playing experience these days. Does this information make you feel better about the state of the game, any worse? Obviously, hacks are still an issue as well. Cheating is going to be ongoing. I myself have been victimized a few times on stream over at twitch.tv/wtfmoses. 2 games in a row, 2 top 10s taken away by someone cheating. Very unfortunate and still a major issue, but is, you know, still being battled mightily by Bluehole, BattleEye, all these different people. So I want to know how you guys have been finding your games. Are you experiencing a better tick rate? Are you experiencing better games now that some of these changes have been implemented? So leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, you can check me out on Twitter at wtfmoses. And that's about it. I hope to see you guys on stream, and I have a little bit more in the way of content coming this week. So until next time, I'll see you out there.